It was supposed to be a peaceful family dinner, a celebration of life, laughter, and food. But for the Thompson family, what started as a simple night out would turn into an unforgettable battle against discrimination. As they stepped into the upscale restaurant, they never expected what would happen next. A rude waiter, a refusal to serve, and an uncomfortable tension that hung in the air. This wasn't just about a meal. This was about a silent war that had been brewing for years, where one black family was fighting for the right to exist in a space where they were clearly not wanted. The waiter's cold glance and dismissive attitude were the first signs of trouble. But when the family's patience finally snapped, what happened next would turn the entire restaurant upside down. The real shocker came when the restaurant owner, the very man who had prided himself on running a welcoming establishment, was suddenly forced to confront the ugly truth. What the waiter didn't know was that tonight, the tables were about to turn, and it wasn't the Thompsons who were going to be the ones to leave. The night was crisp, the city lights twinkling outside the restaurant as Malik, his wife Tonya, and their teenage son Malik Jr. made their way inside. They'd been looking forward to a relaxing dinner to celebrate Malik Jr.'s recent academic achievement. They were regulars at this restaurant, having enjoyed the food and atmosphere for years. But tonight, something felt different. From the moment they entered, the restaurant's usual warm ambience seemed colder, as though something unseen had shifted. The hostess, a friendly woman who'd always greeted them with a smile, led them to their table without her usual warmth. The chill in the air was palpable, but Malik tried to shake it off, believing it was just his imagination. As they sat down, the waiter approached. His name tag read Jason. He was tall, with slick-back hair, and had the air of someone who prided himself on always being in control. His smile, though polite, didn't quite reach his eyes. "Good evening. What can I get you all tonight?" he asked, his tone professional but with a hint of something off. "Just the usual," Malik said, trying to keep things casual. "I'll have the salmon, my wife will take the ribeye, and Malik Jr. will go for the pasta." Jason nodded curtly, not writing anything down, before turning to leave. Malik felt the tension in the air grow thicker, but Tonya gave him a reassuring smile. "It's probably just a busy night," she said, trying to lighten the mood. But minutes turned into 10s, then into 20, and still nothing. No drinks, no bread, no appetizers. The wait seemed never-ending. Finally, Mrs. Thompson waved her hand in the air, catching Jason's attention from across the room. "Excuse me," she said, her voice now laced with frustration. "We've been waiting for over 20 minutes. Could we get our drinks, or at least have our orders taken?" Jason didn't even flinch. He walked over slowly, no rush in his step. "I'll get to it when I can," he said flatly. "Excuse me," George Thompson said, now rising from his seat, his voice stern. "You've had plenty of time to take care of us. Why are we being ignored?" Jason shot a quick glance around the room. "Maybe you should try somewhere else," he said dismissively, as if to suggest they weren't worth his time. Malik Jr. clenched his fists under the table, his eyes wide with shock. He had never seen his father lose his cool before. But this was different. "That's enough," George said, his patience snapped. "We've been regular customers here. You will serve us." The waiter's response wasn't what they expected. With a sneer, he turned on his heel and walked away. "You can wait, or you can leave," he said over his shoulder. The tension was thick. The table was silent except for the soft clinking of silverware on plates, but the air felt too heavy, too wrong. Just then, the door behind them opened with a soft creak. It was the owner of the restaurant, Mr. Harrison, a man who'd always been a presence in the restaurant, a warm, welcoming figure who always took the time to greet his customers. "Mr. Harrison," Mrs. Thompson called, trying to catch his attention. "We've been waiting for over 30 minutes, and we haven't received any service." Mr. Harrison turned, his face instantly concerned when he saw the frustrated expression on her face. "What's going on here?" Before anyone could speak, Jason, the waiter, approached the table again, his posture stiff. These people were being difficult. They were demanding special treatment, he said quickly, his tone defensive. "Special treatment?" Malik asked, his voice rising. We've been here for 30 minutes, and you've done nothing but ignore us. Is this the service we can expect? Mr. Harrison's face tightened as he looked between Jason and the Thompsons. He then turned to the waiter. Leave. Now. Jason blinked in shock. What? You're fired, Mr. Harrison said, his voice unwavering. You've treated paying customers with disrespect. Get out of my restaurant. Jason stood frozen, his eyes darting nervously between Mr. Harrison and the Thompson family. You can't do this, he said weakly. I just did, Mr. Harrison replied, then turned to Malik and his family, his voice softening. I apologize for what happened. Please, dinner's on me tonight. Let me make it right. The tension in the room shifted. For the first time that night, the Thompsons felt a sense of relief wash over them. As Malik, Tonya, and Malik Jr. sat back down, they thought they were finished with the incident, but they had no idea that the true struggle was just beginning. Thank you, Malik said, trying to regain his composure. But we won't be coming back here if this is the way we're going to be treated. Mr. Harrison nodded solemnly, but as he turned to leave, his face froze. Through the front door, 2 police officers entered the restaurant, their eyes immediately locking onto Malik and his family. Is everything all right here, Mr. Harrison? One officer asked. Malik felt a sudden knot form in his stomach. He could feel the tension building again, and before anyone could respond, the other officer spoke up. Could you step outside for a moment, sir? We've had a complaint about some disruptive behavior. Malik exchanged a look with his wife. He had a feeling they hadn't heard the last of this night. As the officers approached the Thompson family's table, the room seemed to shrink. Malik's stomach twisted into knots. His hands clenched, fingers trembling slightly as he tried to keep his cool. The officer who had spoken to them was tall, with a serious expression. His partner, a shorter woman with dark sunglasses perched on top of her head, scanned the room like they were dealing with a crime scene. Malik exchanged a glance with Tonya. She looked as confused as he felt. What was going on? They had done nothing wrong. Yet here they were, on the receiving end of law enforcement's unwanted attention. The officer who had spoken stepped forward, his eyes not leaving Malik. Sir, we need you to step outside for a moment. The words hit Malik like a ton of bricks. The cool, collected air he'd been trying to maintain cracked. Step outside. Why? What's this about? Malik's voice was steady, but his pulse quickened. The officer didn't flinch. We've received a complaint. A disturbance at the table. Would you mind stepping outside to speak with us? I don't know what kind of game this is, Malik said, his voice rising. We've done nothing wrong. We're having a meal, peacefully, as we always do. What complaint? Just follow us, sir, the officer said, a touch of impatience creeping into his voice. Tonya looked at the officer, then back at her husband. The shock in her eyes mirrored his own. Are you serious? You're taking him out of here now, she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Before the officer could respond, the restaurant owner, Mr. Harrison, stepped up, his expression hardening. That's enough, officer. You can't just drag my customers out without cause. You need a reason. The officers glanced at each other, clearly surprised by Mr. Harrison's assertiveness. Mr. Harrison, the woman officer began, her voice low and measured. This is a police matter. You're welcome to come along, but we've been informed of a complaint, and we need to speak with this man. Mr. Harrison's jaw tightened. And I'm telling you, there is no complaint. This family has been nothing but polite. So, unless you have an actual reason, I suggest you leave them alone. The tension in the air could have been cut with a knife. Malik held his breath. For a split second, it seemed like the officers might back down. But then, the woman officer's gaze shifted to the other officer, who gave a subtle nod. Okay, the officer said, turning toward Malik. If you're not going to cooperate, we'll be taking you downtown. Malik's heart raced. He looked at his family. Tonya's face had gone pale, and Malik Jr. was gripping the edge of the table, his hands white-knuckled. He stood up slowly, his gaze locked onto the officers. I'm not going anywhere without a damn good reason. This is harassment, pure and simple. Mr. Harrison stepped forward again. He's not going anywhere unless you show me a warrant. Do you have one? The officers froze. The woman officer's face reddened. The other officer let out a frustrated sigh, but didn't respond. "Good luck with that," Mr. Harrison added, his voice steady. "I won't stand for this. If you want to escalate this further, I'll be calling the chief of police myself. This family is not your target, and you will not intimidate them under my roof." The officers seemed to weigh their options. For a moment, it felt like time stood still. And then, after what seemed like an eternity, the woman officer finally spoke. "This isn't over." She turned, walking toward the door with her partner, their boots echoing off the restaurant's hardwood floors. The air felt lighter, but Malik could still feel his heart pounding. He turned to Mr. Harrison, whose face was still rigid. "Thank you," Malik said, his voice strained. Mr. Harrison gave a small nod. "This isn't the first time something like this has happened in my restaurant, but it'll be the last." The Thompsons sat back down, still processing what had just transpired. It was supposed to be a simple night out, but everything had spiraled out of control in an instant. "We're leaving," Malik said, looking at Tonya. She nodded without a word, her expression tight. But before they could leave, something unexpected happened. Mr. Harrison walked over to their table, his face filled with determination. "I wasn't going to say anything before," he started, his voice low, "but I think it's time you knew the truth." Malik raised an eyebrow. "What truth?" "Jason, the waiter, the one who caused all this trouble?" Mr. Harrison lowered his voice, ensuring no one else heard. "He's not just a waiter here. He's part of a network, an underground group trying to force out black families from this neighborhood." Tonya gasped. What are you talking about?" Malik's face hardened. "Are you telling me this is part of some conspiracy? This whole thing was staged?" Mr. Harrison nodded, glancing nervously around to make sure no one else could overhear. "Jason works with some others in the area, pushing false complaints, trying to intimidate families into leaving. And this isn't the first time they've done it. I've been trying to get them out of my business for months now. But every time I try, they dig in deeper. They've been targeting you ever since you moved in." Malik's eyes narrowed. "Why didn't you tell us this earlier?" "I didn't want to make things worse. I didn't know who I could trust." Mr. Harrison lowered his voice again. "But now I've seen enough. Jason will never work here again. He's going to pay for what he did." Malik took a deep breath, trying to process everything. This was more than just a poor service experience. It was part of a larger plan to drive families like theirs out of the area. Just as Malik stood to leave, his phone buzzed. It was a message from a number he didn't recognize. "Meet me. I know everything. Jason isn't the only one you should be worried about." Malik's pulse spiked. Who could this be? What did they know? He showed the message to Tonya, and her face went pale. "They're still out there," Malik whispered. A shadow was growing in the background, and it was coming for them. But who was this new person, and what did they know? Malik's phone buzzed again. His fingers tightened around the screen, the weight of the message pressing down on him. The message was short, cryptic, but chilling. "Meet me. I know everything. Jason isn't the only one you should be worried about." His heart hammered at his chest. He looked at Tonya. Her brows were furrowed, and a mix of concern and confusion flashed in her eyes. "Who is this?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. Malik stared at the screen, mind racing. "I don't know, but whoever they are, they're telling me things I don't like." "Do you think it's a trap?" Tanya's voice was barely a whisper. Malik didn't answer immediately. He had no idea who could have sent the message, or what they wanted. But one thing was clear. This wasn't over. The evening's events had only scratched the surface of something much deeper and more sinister. Jason, the waiter who had refused to serve them earlier, had been part of something bigger. But what? And who else was involved? The strange message left him with more questions than answers. If Jason was just a pawn, then who were the real players? And why was it that the police officers had acted with such caution when they confronted him? Was there more going on than just one rogue employee in a restaurant? The situation was spiraling, and it felt like the ground was shifting beneath his feet. "We need to figure out who's behind this," Malik said, gripping the phone tightly. "And we need to act fast." Later that evening, Malik and Tonya sat in their living room, still processing the unsettling message. Malik paced the room, running his hand through his short-cropped hair, the weight of it all pressing down on him. "We have no idea who sent this," Malik said, his voice tight. "It could be anyone, another part of Jason's crew, or someone higher up. We can't take any chances." Tonya was still sitting on the couch, her fingers tightly clasped in her lap. "You think they know about the fight at the restaurant?" she asked softly, her voice filled with concern. "I don't know," Malik replied, stopping to face her. "But what I do know is, someone has been watching us, and we need to find out who." A sudden knock at the door jolted them both out of their thoughts. Malik's hand instinctively moved to the gun he kept in the drawer for protection. They weren't expecting anyone, and after the events of the day, trust wasn't something they could afford. Tonya slowly stood up, her eyes wide. Malik gestured for her to stay put as he moved toward the door. He checked the peephole. It was dark outside, but he could make out a figure, a woman standing there. She wasn't familiar. He hesitated, his mind racing. What if this was a setup? What if it was one of Jason's associates trying to finish what he had started? Taking a deep breath, Malik opened the door just a crack, enough to see her face. She was older, with long dark hair and a serious look in her eyes. "Malik Henderson?" she asked, her voice low and urgent. "Who's asking?" Malik replied, not letting his guard down. "I'm Danielle Graves," she said quickly, her eyes scanning the interior of the house. "I'm a civil rights attorney, and I think you and your family are in serious danger." Malik froze, processing her words. What kind of danger? She looked over her shoulder, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can we talk inside?" Once Danielle was inside, she wasted no time. Her expression was grim, and her body language told Malik that whatever she had to say was serious. "I'm here because you've been targeted," she said. "And it's not just about Jason or the restaurant. This goes deeper." "What do you mean?" Malik asked, his tone demanding answers. Danielle leaned forward, lowering her voice. "I've been following your case since the restaurant incident went viral. What you don't know is that there's a larger organization behind this, one that's been systematically pushing out black families in the area." Malik's stomach twisted. "You're saying this isn't just about Jason's vendetta?" "No," Danielle replied, shaking her head. "It's a well-organized campaign. And Jason, he's just one of the low-level players." Malik's mind raced. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Who's behind it? Danielle hesitated before speaking, her voice filled with a mixture of anger and fear. "The local developers. They've been buying up properties from black families at a fraction of the value. They use intimidation, harassment, and sometimes worse, to push people out. They want to take control of the neighborhood, flip the properties for a profit, and push the black community out." Tonya, who had been listening intently from the couch, let out a shocked gasp. "That's what this is about. Our property. They want to steal it." "It's bigger than that," Danielle said. "They've been targeting families like yours for years, and they're not going to stop." Malik stood up, the weight of the situation finally hitting him. "And Jason is just a start?" Danielle nodded. "The others are more dangerous, and they're watching you." Suddenly, the lights in the house flickered. Malik's heart skipped a beat. He turned to look at Tonya. She looked just as confused and tense as he felt. "I don't know what's happening," Malik said, his voice low. "But I think they've already made their move." Danielle stood up quickly. "We need to get out of here. They're monitoring you. This isn't just a neighborhood dispute. This is organized crime, and you're in their sights." Just then, Malik's phone buzzed. He grabbed it quickly, reading the message with growing dread. "If you're still alive, you should have left by now. Meet us at the usual place. You know where." Malik's pulse raced. "What the hell is this?" he muttered under his breath. "Who is it?" Danielle asked sharply, her eyes narrowing. "I don't know," Malik replied, his voice tight with fear. "But they know where I am." He looked at Tonya. "We need to move. Now." Malik and Danielle grabbed their things, heading for the door. They didn't have time to waste. Every moment counted, but as they stepped outside, they saw something that stopped them in their tracks. A black SUV was parked across the street, its headlights off, but the engine running. The windows were tinted, but the silhouette of a man in the driver's seat was clear. "Get in the car," Malik whispered to Danielle, "and don't make a sound." The SUV's engine roared to life. Malik's heart hammered in his chest as he and Danielle ducked into the car. But before they could pull away, the figure in the SUV turned his head toward them. He smiled, and the chase began. To be continued. The engine of the SUV roared behind them as Malik slammed his foot on the accelerator. His heart was pounding in his chest, each beat syncing with the frantic rhythm of his thoughts. The headlights in the rearview mirror grew brighter, drawing closer. The man in the SUV had seen them. He knew they were on the move. But Malik wasn't about to let fear take over. Not now. Not after everything he'd been through. He gripped the wheel tighter, his knuckles turning white. "Danielle, hold on," Malik shouted as he swerved around a corner. The tires screeched, but the car held steady. The SUV followed, close on their tail. The streets were dimly lit, but that didn't matter. The adrenaline surged through his veins, making him sharper, more focused. Every decision felt life or death. Danielle glanced over at him. Her eyes narrowed. "You're not going to outrun them forever," she said, her voice calm but urgent. Malik shot her a glance. "I know. I'm counting on something bigger than me." Danielle's eyebrows furrowed. "What do you mean?" Malik didn't answer. He didn't need to. He knew what he was about to do. He just needed to stay one step ahead of them. The SUV was too close now. Malik could hear the screech of tires as it rounded the corner, right behind him. The chase wasn't just physical, it was mental. His mind was running 1,000 calculations a second. As they approached an intersection, Malik took a sharp turn into an alley. The car fishtailed slightly, but he kept his foot down. This was his last chance. The SUV followed the turn, but Malik's plan was already in motion. As the car turned the corner, Malik slammed on the brakes, jerking the wheel to the left. The SUV couldn't react fast enough. It hit the curb and swerved, barely missing the lamppost. But Malik was already gone, disappearing into the darkness of another alley. "Hold tight," Malik called out as he pushed the car to its limit. They were getting closer to the edge of the city now. If he could make it to the highway, they would lose the SUV in the traffic. It was the only shot he had. The streets were empty, the only sounds being the hum of the engine and the occasional honk from a distant car. Malik kept his eyes on the road, but in the back of his mind, he could feel the weight of the danger catching up with him. He had no idea who the men in the SUV were, but they weren't just random thugs. They were organized, dangerous, and they wanted something. The phone buzzed again. Malik reached down to his jacket pocket, his eyes darting to the road. The message read, "Stop running. You know we'll find you." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. These people knew him, knew everything. His mind raced. Was it too late? Could they still get away? Just as Malik approached the highway, he saw lights flashing in the distance. A few cars were already on the road, but it wasn't just the cars that caught his attention. It was the familiar blue and red lights of a police cruiser. They were here. Malik's pulse quickened. Were the police there to help him, or were they in on it? He couldn't risk it. He had to make a decision, fast. He swerved onto the exit ramp for the highway and floored the gas pedal. The SUV was still behind him, gaining speed. But Malik wasn't giving up. Not now. As they shot onto the main road, Malik slammed his fist on the horn, hoping to alert the officers. But the SUV wasn't backing off. It was relentless. They had to be stopped before things went any further. Malik took a sharp turn into a side street, hoping to shake the SUV. They were almost to the end of the road, but the SUV was right on his tail, too close to get away. Suddenly, a loud screech pierced the night air. Another set of police cars appeared in front of them, blocking the street ahead. Malik's eyes widened in disbelief. The officers emerged, guns drawn. The SUV was surrounded, but the driver didn't give up that easily. The doors flew open, and several armed men spilled out, all wearing masks. "Get out of the car," one of the officers shouted. Malik held his breath, unsure of what was happening. Were they friend or foe? Before Malik could process it, The officers moved in with precision, taking down the masked men before they could react. The sound of the handcuffs clicking into place was the sound of justice, ringing through the night air. "Malik Henderson?" one of the officers asked, walking up to the car. "We've been tracking these guys for a while." Malik nodded, his heart still racing. "Who are they?" "They were working for a group tied to local developers," the officer explained. "They've been harassing black families, pushing them out of their homes through intimidation and violence. But we finally have them." Malik exhaled, the tension in his shoulders releasing. "But this wasn't over. Not yet. We've got your back," the officer said, a small but knowing smile on his face. "And the city will know who these men were. No more running." Tonya let out a breath of relief, and Malik looked at her, the weight of everything finally lifting. He had done it. They had done it. The next morning, the news broke. The developers, the masked men, and their network were exposed to the world. The public outrage was immediate. Social media erupted, demanding accountability. Malik's story had spread like wildfire, sparking a wave of support for him and his family. The story was no longer just about a black family being harassed. It was about an entire community standing up to injustice. The video of the chase, the confrontation, and the arrests went viral. But it wasn't just about the fight. It was about what came next. Malik and Tonya stood in front of their house, holding hands as they watched the news vans pull away. They had won. But what came next would define everything. The developer's empire was crumbling. Lawsuits piled up. And in the wake of it all, Malik had become a symbol of resistance, a figure that everyone could rally behind. But that wasn't why he had fought. He had fought for his family, for his community, and for the truth. "Thank you," a neighbor said, walking up to Malik. "You've inspired us all." Malik smiled, his eyes filled with gratitude. "We're just getting started." Justice had been served, but the fight wasn't over. Malik's journey was a testament to the power of standing up, to never backing down when injustice strikes. It was about community, about resilience. Now it's your turn. Like this video if you believe standing up against injustice is worth it. Share this story to remind the world that we deserve respect, rights, and a place at the table. Comment below. What would you have done if you were Malik? Subscribe to our channel for more stories where the underdog rises and the world watches them conquer. This is the rise of justice, and the fight continues.